Thank you. I was just standing backstage with my wife, who never comes to events like this. She's not very political, but she has very strong political feelings, so strong that she doesn't like to hear about politics because it winds her up. And she says, 2 seconds ago, she goes, and she's a very sweet person, former religion teacher, and she goes, I want to introduce you. And she has that kind of crazed look in her eye, and I said, I don't know if that's a good idea. Why do you want to introduce me? And she said, because I want to lead the crowd in a chant, we are not garbage. And I thought, that's it right there. The abuse that the best people in the country have taken for the past 8 years is too much. You're garbage? Really? Listen to who's saying that. Anyway, I'm really grateful to be here. I never thought that I would be speaking at a rally for Donald Trump. This is the 4th time I've done it. And it has felt not only like an honor and a privilege every time, but it has felt really natural. I'm sort of surprised. I was in journalism for 33 years, hanging around I know, someone just said, woo! It's nothing to brag about, trust me. I honestly feel like saying I was young and I needed the money. You know, it's almost like when the naughty pictures of you emerged, and you're like, that was the old me. But I spent my whole life standing at the back, watching, and I always thought, politicians, they're disgusting. By the way, I still think that. I would never get on stage and endorse one. You'd have to be totally bereft of a soul to do something like that. And here I am with a full-throated, utterly sincere endorsement of Donald Trump. How did that happen? And I was thinking about that this morning in the shower, where I do my best thinking. I like thinking in the shower because there's no lying to yourself in the shower. Because when you walk out of the shower and you see this kind of furry, lumpy primate in the mirror, there's no imagining you're God. No, it's very grounding to see yourself naked at least once a day. I always think, I got to hang a black sheet over that mirror, but I keep it just to keep me on the ground and with perspective. Anyway, I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking, I've known Donald Trump, a long time, just from working in television. And what people forget about Donald Trump, who is often described as a real estate developer, a casino owner, both of which are true, but that for, a huge chunk of his life, 10 years anyway, he had the #1 show on television. He had mastered the business that I was in. And, on the one hand, television is kind of a repulsive business. It's like a P. Diddy party every night. Ew, yeah, tell me about it. I spent 30 years doing it. But on the other hand, the people who are really, really successful, and Trump was #1 in television, all have one thing in common, which is they understand people. And the good ones like people. And they're liked back. And by the way, you probably know this, but in the TV business, which has spent the last 8 years telling you Trump is a terrifying dictator, he was loved. Everyone loved him. And I liked him. I liked him from the first time I talked to him 20 years ago. He was hilarious and interesting and smart and, again, incredibly funny. And it was almost 10 years ago. It was the winter of 2015. I was in the car. I'd actually interviewed Trump that morning. I was working on a TV network that shall not be named. And Trump was the guest. And he was, of course, this famous star on another network, NBC. And he did great, like he always did. We had a great time. And about 3 hours later, I was in the car going somewhere, and he called me. And he said, I just want you to know that I'm thinking of running for president. And I just did not take it seriously at all. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm running for president, okay. Because everyone in TV thinks I should be president. Joe Scarborough wakes up every morning, I should be president. But he's not really going to run because you don't want to give up the salary, and it's hard to run for president. It's just a way to sell a book or whatever. So I kind of laughed. And he said, no, I'm going to surprise you. And it was such a weird conversation that I actually wrote it down in my calendar. I looked it up today. I wrote it down. Donald Trump calls, says he's going to run for president, because there was something in his voice that didn't sound like the Trump I thought I knew. There was a resolve there that I thought was amazing. And, of course, the rest is history. Almost 10 years later, he has completely transformed the country and the world and the political party under whose banner he ran, the Republican Party. And for me, it was this incredible journey of watching this guy, covering him, knowing him, to where I am now, which is speaking on a stage without any shame at all, not getting paid for it, doing it because I really, really mean it, and endorsing him for president. And so I just want to explain how I got here, because I think it says a lot about who Trump is. So the first thing I noticed about Trump was that everybody in the Republican Party I had suspicions about hated him immediately. There was something about Donald Trump that whenever he spoke, that the people I'd always thought were kind of false, the Jonah Goldbergs of the world, the Mitch McConnells of the world, but these were leading figures in the Republican Party, my neighbors in Washington, D.C., who are Republicans. Here Trump comes out of nowhere. He seems to be gaining traction. People who'd never voted Republican, who never voted at all, seem to like Trump. This seemed like great news if you're trying to expand your political party. And yet the Republicans in Washington were so offended by Trump that they couldn't even talk about him. I remember being at a Christmas party in 2015 with my aforementioned sweet wife at our neighbor's house. All kinds of people sitting around, and someone mentioned Trump, and my wife, who's not political at all, says, I like Trump. I remember one of my neighbors goes, oh, yeah, I like Trump. Oh, that's hilarious. And my wife goes, no, I do like Trump. Why? Is that bad? And people, it was like the devil getting splashed with holy water. They just moved back slowly, staring at her like, is this person dangerous? That was such a shocking thing to say in Northwest D.C. in 2015. And I began to ask myself, why is Donald Trump so threatening? Is it because he's got some crazed extremist program? No. Everything he said was kind of moderate and sensible. Like, I don't know, we should have a border. And if we're going to have NATO, maybe the countries in NATO should help pay for it. If we're going to defend Europe, maybe they could, pony up a little bit. Why are we paying the entire bill? That didn't seem crazy to me. Boy, they treated Trump like he was a dangerous freak, like he just escaped from the state mental institution, shackles on his arm and a butcher knife in his hand. Stop this man! And I just remember watching this. I wasn't emotional about it at first, but I remember thinking my neighbors all seem so reasonable and sensible, even the Democrats. All kind of normal people. I lived on their street. Why are they so mad about a guy who says stuff like we should have a border? And then I realized that they hated Trump because Trump asked questions they couldn't answer. Like, why are we doing it this way? And I remember thinking and saying, well, I don't know, why don't you just answer his question? If not having a border is such a good idea, if it's so important to have a tight labor market, or if you think tariffs are so terrible, why don't you just explain why? Why are you yelling at the guy? No matter what he said, he would get up and say, I think we should have tariffs. And they would say, racist! And I would think to myself, what do tariffs have to do with race? I was completely confused. And then over time, within about a year, I realized people hated Trump because they were guilty of crimes. And those people were my neighbors and coworkers. My mind exploded. Ultimately, I had to leave the city where I spent my entire life. Because thanks to Donald Trump, I saw what it really was, which was a scam. It was the richest city in the United States. Its suburbs, 8 out of 10 of the richest suburbs were suburbs of Washington, D.C., and we didn't make anything. There was no business there. There was no production of anything. By the way, there was also no creativity or open-mindedness. How did these people get so rich? Well, by stealing. That's how. That had never occurred to me till Trump came. And yet everybody involved in the grift knew instantly the jig was up. If this guy keeps talking, we're in deep trouble. And I'm not even sure, and he's coming on stage in a minute, and maybe we can ask him. I'm not even sure that when he got to Washington, Donald Trump understood how corrupt the city was. I'm not sure he even knew. He sensed there was a problem. Neither he nor me nor any normal person had any idea that even before he got to the city, the CIA and the FBI would be working to destroy him. That's the threat that he posed to them. And what was that threat? Just being honest in a simple way about what he saw, telling the truth. They saw the truth as a mortal threat, and they see the truth as a mortal threat now. I really think, I mean, look, let's be completely honest. Donald Trump is the choice of American voters for president. That's not wish fulfillment. I'm not saying that because I want it to be true, though I do. I'm saying that because it's completely obvious. There is no Democrat running for anything who could fill a hall like this, who could do it 4 times a day for a year. There's not one. There's no Republican in Washington. Could Mitch McConnell fill this hall? I don't think so. Yeah, every boo is deserved if you only knew how deserved those boos were. One of the things that we learned from Donald Trump, one of the many, many things, completely changed my life watching it. One of the many things we learned is that the Republican Party, the leaders of the Republican Party, really despised their own voters. They had zero interest in improving their lives. And we know this because as 100,000 a year died of drug overdose, as their towns died from offshoring of industry, as their towns were invaded from people from foreign countries who were here illegally, they did nothing. Their attention was focused abroad to the Middle East and Eastern Europe. That's where all the money went. That's where all the prayers went. That's where all the attention went, because that's all they cared about. They didn't care at all about their own voters. And by the way, I didn't really know that. I think most people in this room sense that. You know when someone doesn't care about you, you can feel it. You can feel the contempt coming off them in oily waves. That's exactly what that is. It's contempt. Joe Biden's not the only one who thinks you're garbage, actually. Mitch McConnell agrees with that. That's a fact. And that's one of the reasons that they don't want Donald Trump back in Washington. But the main reason they don't want Donald Trump back in Washington is something called disclosure. Do you know what disclosure is? Disclosure means sunlight. Disclosure is the principle that you, as an American citizen, an equity owner of this country, not a renter, not a serf, not a slave, but as a citizen, an owner of this country, a person on whose behalf the government exists. There's no other reason to have the government except to serve you, that you have a right to know what that government is doing with your money in your name. It's not a privilege that you are granted. If they're in a good mood one day, you can know a little bit more about how John F. Kennedy was murdered in 1963. You have an absolute moral right to know because you own it. They're your employees who somehow have decided they're your overlords. And they're very concerned that if Donald Trump comes back to Washington, we're going to find out what's happened to the $100 billion that we've sent Ukraine over the past 2.5. What happened to that money? There's never been an audit of it. Where do you think it went? Have you been to McLean recently? Yeah. It's not just Hunter Biden, by the way. Hunter Biden, I mean, to his great credit, was so high on crack he couldn't steal half as much as, you know, your average contractor in Washington and his friends. So the truth is, actual crimes have taken place. Crimes that made people rich, crimes that hurt American citizens, and you're not allowed to know their scale or the details about any of them because it's classified. And they're terrified if Donald Trump gets back, accompanied by a full cast of reformers, not alone this time. Not a single man riding into Washington, man against the machine. It's hard to do that. He did it. He fought off 2 impeachment attempts for daring to do it. But if he comes back with, I don't know, Bobby Kennedy and Elon Musk, when he comes back with an army of people who know exactly what's up, they know what's going on, they know where the bodies are likely to be buried, and they're coming with shovels to dig them up. What you're seeing now is actual panic and desperation. And I guess I've kind of backhandedly defended Hunter Biden on the grounds that he was so out of it he had no idea what was actually going on. I'll extend the same courtesy to Kamala Harris. And that creepy guy who's following around on the campaign trail. By the way, AOC just said the other day, speaking of which, AOC, that would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I love that. She's this revolutionary who's named after a conquistador and doesn't even know it. Your last name is Cortez, honey. Sit this one out. Excuse me. And people would be like, Larry Mussolini shows up and is like, no, I'm against fascism, really. All right, got it. What a moron. But she was at a rally in Vegas yesterday, and she goes, Doug Emhoff is the model of masculinity. Oh, man. Yeah. Memo to any unmarried women here, do not date a feminist man. They'll smack you around, trust me. It's the weak ones you have to be afraid of, but it's the strong ones they're afraid of. Because they know that what they've done and have been doing for decades could be exposed. And this is existential for them. So I would just say, without putting too fine a point on it, but every person in this room senses what I'm talking about, do not underestimate what they are capable of. To them, this is not an election. It's much bigger than that. These are people who think they have a moral right to rule, and that you were born in the serf class and there you will stay. They believe that. These same people lecturing us about democracy. They think it is their right to be in charge, as if anyone in a democracy has a right to be in charge. People serve at the pleasure of the population for the benefit of the population. It's literally that simple. But they don't believe that. Donald Trump has stood in the face of that group, which includes every power center, not simply in the United States, but in the world, almost since the day he called me in the car in the winter of 2015 and said he was dead serious about running. And he has faced them off, and he has endured more punishment, graver trials than any politician in the history of this country. And he didn't need to. He didn't need to. At any point, he could have said, you know what? I've got a lot of grandchildren, some of whom I enjoy playing golf with. I'm pretty rich, actually. You may have heard that. And I don't need this. And he has bulled forward with energy and cheerfulness from beginning to end. And I would submit, since AOC raised the question of what a real man looks like, let me just tell you my view of what a real man looks like. A real man is a cheerful man. And he's cheerful because he's brave. Brave people have hope because they have a mission and they're strong inside. And they know, because they are living for something greater than themselves, that even if they die, they don't die. The mission lives on. And that's what gives them heart and cheerfulness. They are not morose. They are not self-pitying. They are bright, bright-eyed, cheerful, energetic, and in command. And that is exactly what Trump has proven to be, including on the day he was shot in the face. And I know because I talked to him that night. And he made a joke about it. And I sometimes think, I'm a pretty tough guy. I've been fired by all these cable networks. It's really hard to be fired by a cable network. I've really been through it. Thank me for my service later. It's absurd. All of us are the heroes of our own drama, of course, no matter what it is. You teach middle school social studies, I'm sure you come home and think, man, I fought a battle today. You run some stupid cable TV show and you're like, I'm tough as hell. Try getting shot in the face at a rally and then pushing off the Secret Service and standing up with your fist in the air. Try that. That was the most revealing moment I have ever seen in the life not just of any politician, but of any person I have known personally, someone I actually know. And that's the moment that little boys dream about. That's, I mean, every little boy, because men do not become men organically. They have to prove that they're men. And every little boy dreams about some war scenario. Everyone's dead but me, and I'm charging the machine gun nest because I'm the bravest man. Would you? Would you be the bravest man? Or would you be in fetal position, calling out your mom's name? I don't know. We don't know. You haven't been put in that position. I haven't either. Donald Trump just was on camera. It was so unbelievable that Democrats on MSNBC and the internet immediately accused him of faking it on the grounds that nobody could be that brave. And it's true, that's not a kind of Doug Emhoff thing to do. Kind of hard to imagine the second gentleman standing up and being like, fight, fight, fight. You know, or Tim Walz. But the truth is, masculinity is still an indispensable thing. I'm sorry. It is. Even in an age of Uber Eats and air conditioning. No one's going out to slay a mastodon with a spear, but you still need a brave man in charge. Because it's a rough world and unexpected things happen. And as my friend Mike Tyson said, famously, everybody got a plan until he gets hit in the face. So what's your plan when you get shot in the face? You don't have a plan. You act purely on instincts, and that's when we find out if you're a leader or not. And that's what we learned. And we're learning it still. We're learning it still, because even if you or me have been able to pull that off, you think that's the end? You think that's the last time they're going to try to do that to you? Are you joking? No, probably not. You think even if you manage to get the most votes, you can get elected. If you get elected, what's it going to be like to govern? It is an unending struggle every single day to represent the people you've promised to represent, the people who otherwise have no representation. None. Because trust me, outside of Donald Trump, very few people in Washington care about you. And I mean that. Because you're not Ukrainian. But he does care. And because he cares, because at this point, I don't care if you're a New York Times correspondent, and if there are any in this room, let me raise my middle finger in your face. And that is heartfelt. I mean that. That's not just some talking point I'm throwing out there to make you feel good. My hostility toward legacy media is earned. I know them. They're worse than you think. But that's not just a talking point. That is real. Someone who is willing to do that on your behalf is not only the man you need, he's the only man who can represent you. Because that's what it's going to take. You're going to have to stare down the barrel of the hate aimed at you, not just from assorted people on the internet, but from the most powerful people on the planet. And you're going to have to stand up straight and say, onward, with a smile on your face every day. And he's the only person I have ever met in my entire 55 years on this planet who can do that. So with that, let me get my handheld mic to introduce the former and next president.
Ding dong.